Hey everybody, today I'm taking a look at Murano, which is a 2 to 4 player board game designed by Markus and Inka Brand. This one takes around 60 to 75 minutes to play on average. Before I get started on my review of Murano, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer here in the UK. And if you use my link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. Okay, so Murano is going to look like this when it's set up, and I have progressed the game a few rounds here just to show you some better examples, because normally all these islands will be completely empty, and you can see that each of these islands have a number of different squares on them where buildings can go in these kind of shadowed areas, and also where these pavements can go with these kind of little cobblestone areas. Now, running alongside the outside of the board, you have all the different actions you can take, and the way you take actions is by moving these gondolas. Each player is also going to have a number of gondoliers in their personal supply, which look like this, as well as a number of these cubes, just to show that buildings belong to you. You've got the money supply, and you also have a bag of gems here, which can come into play later. Now, the objective of the game, of course, is to get as many victory points as you can, and you're going to do that by trying to achieve secret objectives, as well as building buildings throughout the game. So you have two decks of cards here. You have the secret objective cards, and you have the special buildings cards, which can come into play when you build special buildings. So on your turn, you'll be doing one of two things. Generally, you'll be moving a gondola and taking an action, but you do have the option to pass on your turn, take a coin from the supply, and still move a gondola. But yeah, generally you'll be taking actions. And when you do that, you're going to select one of the gondolas, move it clockwise around the board, and then take the action which you land on. Whenever you move one spot, it's always going to be for free, but every movement after that is going to cost you a coin, and then 2 coins, and then 3 coins, and so on. So what this might mean is in a future turn, if I wanted to take this action, for example, and something is in the way, bearing in mind I can't just stay still, I could go like this for free, then I could move this one in for 1 coin. So let's take a look at all the individual actions and what they do. So you have a number of spots which simply allow you to buy buildings. Now, when you buy buildings, you can generally either spend 2 and take the top one from the matching stack, or you can actually spend 4 and search through the stack and get the exact building you want, because there are, sometimes differences between the tiles. So you have the option to buy shops here, you have the options to buy these glass factories, and you have the options to buy special buildings, and you also have the option to buy a palace. And they generally all cost the same amount of money, but I think the glass factories actually only cost 1 coin. Following on from that, you have the build action, where you can build 1 to 3 buildings based on the ones you've acquired. So whenever you build a glass factory, you get a point for it. Whenever you build a shop, you get 2 points. Whenever you build a palace, you get 3 points. Whenever you build a special building, you'll get a bonus card. And whenever you build a pavement, you'll get nothing at all. However, you do not have to pay for pavement, and you can simply just draw them from the stack and place them on the board like so. Now, whenever you place a building, you can see they have to go next to a road like this, so I cannot just randomly spawn a building without a road next to it. But let's take a look at what actually the buildings do, in addition to simply getting you points. So the glass factories, which are these buildings up here, they are going to allow you to search through this bag of gems to try find certain colours. Now, you can do that only when you go to this spot here, where again you can draw from the bag, and for each glass factory you have, you can choose to lose 2 points to go and dive in that bag one more time. So when you do that, you're going to take a look at the bag, you're going to draw your token like so, and depending on the colours you have, you can either keep hold of them or you can sell them in groups. If you have a group of 3, you'll get 20 coins, which is obviously great to give you flexibility to buy things and move those gondolas around. If you spend 2, you get 12 coins, and if you spend just the 1, you get 5 coins. But you can see if you have the more glass factories, you have more options to dive in that bag, but you will be losing 2 points each time you do it. But you do have the option not to use all of your glass factories, so you can just use as few or as many as you like. The shops here are important in terms of getting income when you come to this action. So when you come to this action, you'll have a look at all the shops you have on one island, so you have the freedom to select any island you want. And then if you have a number of different shops on that island, you will match the shops you have with the customers on the roads. So you can see here I have a blue shop and a black shop, and I have 2 blues and a black customer, which means I'll actually get 3 coins, because again I have shops which match those types of customers. Now, if you have multiples of the same buildings on an island, then you only get to activate 1 of them. However, there are 3 different colours. You've got these red ones, the black ones, the blue ones, and red ones as well. Now, no actions actually relate to the palaces. Yes, they will give you 3 points, but generally these shields here on the palaces are going to be relevant when it comes to endgame scoring, which ties into the next action, which is to draw these objective cards. So whenever you take this action, for the first time you do it and the first card you acquire, it will cost you 1 coin, then it will cost you 2 coins and 3 coins and so on. So the more cards you collect, the more money you're going to have to spend, but this is going to be a big factor when it comes to scoring. So when you take this action, you're going to draw 3 cards from the stack here, and then you're going to select one of them for endgame scoring. So these all do different things rating on conditions on the islands, and this is only going to be relevant at the end of the game. So you can see here that this one says you get 12 victory points if the number of special buildings, which are the red ones we haven't talked about yet, and the blue customers on the island match. So you need to have those exact numbers, and there must be at least 1 special building on the island. If I have that completed at the end of the game, I'll get 12 victory points. However, if I will not have the option to cash this card out unless I place a gondola, or gondolier, sorry, on that island. And that corresponds to this action here. So when you come to here, you can spend 2 coins and place one of your gondoliers from your supply onto any island you see fit. So let's just say I went to this one here. You'll put it on your colour. And once that gondolier is placed there, it's going to be locked in for the remainder of the game. And basically, for each gondolier that you have assigned to an island, you can match 1 card to it. So I'll be looking to try and match one of my objective cards to this specific island for that endgame scoring. Because again, for every gondolier, you have to have a card and vice versa. Otherwise, they're going to be completely useless. But let's take a look at what some of the other cards go for here. So you can see this one says you get 4 points for each black shop you have on the matching island. You can get 2 points for each glass factory you have on the island. And lots of different things, like this one here that says, you receive 12 victory points if the number of your own buildings on the island is equal to the combined number of your opponent's buildings on the island. And you're just trying to tailor your little strategy to try and match these cards with what you're doing on the main board. Now, whenever you build these special buildings, you'll draw a card from the special deck here, which will give you a unique power or something you can do special throughout the rest of the game. And I've got a few examples here, like this one here says every time I build a special building, I receive a victory point, which normally wouldn't be the case. Or this one here, this trading station allows me to draw another gem from the bag, but then put one back. So it gives me that flexibility to get the exact gem that I want. And you've got the market hall here that says every time I take the income action, I get another 2 money, so that's going to make my shops a lot more productive. And I've got the tavern here, which says I now pay 2 gold less for each new character I buy to make getting new cards a lot more affordable. And I believe the final spot that we haven't talked about yet is this one here, where when you land on it, you can either spend 3 coins to buy a new gondolier to play with, or you can actually choose to send one of your gondoliers back to the supply there and take 3 coins for a quick little cash injection. And that is essentially how the games work. You're going to keep on taking turns, moving these gondolas around the edge, taking actions, building buildings, getting points for doing so, and trying to match your objective cards with where you've placed and invested in spots with your gondoliers. The game will end when 2 of these stacks of tiles are completely depleted, and then you'll work out, all your in-game scoring with your end-game scoring based on the objective cards, and the player with the most victory points will be the winner. Okay, so let's share some thoughts on Murano. And I have to say, this game does certainly have a different feel to anything I've played before, so I have to give it respects in that regard. And I suppose the thing about this game, or the main thing I took away from it, is that idea of trying to play the board as best as you can and match them with the objective cards you have, and try to score as optimally as you can by doing so. But I like the idea that, yes, you can collect these objective cards, but they're not set in stone, and you're not committing them until the very end. However, you need to invest in having the gondolier there in order to score that card in the first place. And sometimes you may have several objectives which link to a certain island, which means you have to invest several of your gondoliers there. And the first time you do it is going to be cheap, but the second time you do it, you're going to have to steal someone else's spot and spend more coins, which I don't think I talked about in the little overview there. So I quite like that, and you can really kind of end up paying through the nose. But I will say that while that is, I suppose, the unique thing about it, it can become a bit brain burnery at times, because everything is always in flux in this game. Unless everything is finished and every single square on the island is completed and built on, you're always kind of spinning a lot of plates, and you have to be alert at all times. Because, for example, I had this card here where I want to have a gondolier on an island, and on that island I want to have all these special buildings matching at least in numbers, with the blue customers, which at the moment is fantastic because I have one of each, which means I'm going to score all the points for that card. However, as the game progresses, whether deliberately or not, which is normally going to be indeliberately, is that people are going to build there, they're going to start building more roads, and inevitably it's going to be another blue customer there, which means I'm going to have to spend my whole turn building another special building there to match those numbers up again. And yes, I understand that is the thing that you're supposed to be doing in the game, but it can feel a little bit frustrating at times, and it made me, at least the kind of player I am, it made me feel like, you know what, let's just solidify those points in place and spend all my time just filling the island up so that nobody else can mess with it anymore, so I can set those points in stone, which I suppose may be kind of against the the vibe of the game and what you're not really what the designer have intended, I suppose. But yeah, that's just what I took away from it. So I like to have those points in hand rather than speculating throughout the game. Now, that being said, I do like the way that everything is not set in stone, and even if you had a plan A there to say, you know what, I'm going for this card on this island, somebody just happens to mess it up, it doesn't mean that that is going to be completely wasted for you now, because you might end up having another card which matches up with something else on this island, which is going to score you points, and that old card which you were originally intending to go here can go to some other island, and you can still score that way. Yes, it might mean you have to zig and zag and start putting gondoliers down on other islands, but again, you have got that wiggle room to change things on the fly. I do like the flow of money in this game, where you have to build up a bit of a shopping network by matching the customers with the shops, and also you can end up losing points in order to get the gems to trade them in for money as well. And of course, you can even choose to sacrifice your gondoliers to get a quick little chunk of change there. And of course, you need money to do everything in this game. You need it to buy buildings, and you, of course, need it, more importantly, to actually take the actions that you want, because moving the gondoliers or the gondolas will inevitably end up being quite expensive, because what you'll find a lot of the time is that there'll be a lot of traffic in certain areas like this, meaning that taking a simple action will be quite expensive. Like, for example, if I really wanted to build or take a shopping action here, I'm going to have to first move this one. Yeah, it's going to be free. This one's going to cost me 1. This one's going to cost me another 2. This one's going to cost me another 3, and so on. So you do need money to get out of those little tight situations, which can feel it can be frustrating at times, because you think, you know what, I'm not really prepared to spend that much money just to take an action where earlier I could have done it for free. So you kind of want to leave it to the other players to move and shift the boats around in order for you to take the action that you want. So again, sometimes I thought it was fine, but generally I thought it was annoying that you couldn't just do the action you wanted without moving a hell of a lot of other boats to do it. Now, one of my favourite things about the game are the special cards. These are all worth having. They're all very powerful, and they add a lot of assistance throughout the game. So yeah, I love it when games use special powers which aren't too broken, but are interesting enough to really worth having. So yeah, I thought this game struck a really good balance of adding in these special cards, because they can really pay dividends as the game goes on. That being said, my biggest criticism of the game is the swinginess of some of the plays here, because, of course you have this random element of drawing the gems from the bag there, which are either going to go in your favour or it's not going to go in your favour. And when you have certain cards or objectives like this one, for example, where it says, if I have a gondolier in this island and I have every one of these gems I have in the end of the game, I can trade in for 7 points. But for example, the game I played the other day, I ended up having this card. I ended up having even a good mitigation tool of getting the gems I want from the bag. I never drew those gems. So it's going to work for you, or it's going to work against you, purely based on luck. Additionally, this game does suffer with what I call Takenoko syndrome, where you can end up drawing cards from the stack here, which may automatically be complete by islands that are already finished, and you might already have a gondolier there. So without doing any work, you could draw the most convenient card ever and get a huge chunk of points by doing no work at all, which can feel a little bit deflating and, again, very swingy. Like, for example, there could be an island there that has a bunch of the black shops on it, and then you'll draw a card here that says, you get 4 points per black shop on that island. Yes, of course I'm going to go for that one. So yeah, I generally don't like it when games do that, and this game has that in spades, unfortunately. This game does play in around 60 to 75 minutes, which of course is shorter than the average Euro, so it's nice that you can get this played in quite a concise amount of time, and the turns in isolation are nice and quick as well. All the different actions are very simple, just by building, or maybe build a few, but yeah, you're certainly not going to be waiting a long time to take your turn again. So yeah, time investment and the general time stamp of the game is pretty good. Now, the player interaction in this game is pretty much passive. Yes, people will be moving the gondolas onto spots that you wanted to, which might end up costing you a bit more money or preventing you from taking the action at all, which is all fine stuff, you know, nice and Eurofied, I suppose. And I suppose most of the interaction comes from the fact that when you are doing your business, you're going to end up messing with other people's business. Now, for me, that is not such an enjoyable thing. It might be enjoyable based on your tastes, but especially when you might be very carefully trying to balance things on islands. Like, you could have invested a lot of effort and time in order to completely balance out, again, the palaces and the customers there. All the spaces have been taken up apart from one, and then all of a sudden somebody builds another palace there, which throws that balance completely off key, and there's nothing you could have done about it, and your plans are completely out the window, and you're going to have to refocus on something else. So that kind of messing with other people, again, usually indeliberately, is a bit too much for me, and I didn't quite enjoy that part of the game, if I'm honest. The replayability for this game is pretty solid. You get a ton of these end game scoring cards. You get a lot of these special building cards as well. And the game scales pretty good as well because, you know, you have two sides of the board here. This is for the 2 and 3 player count, where these islands are simply just placeholders for the components. But in the higher player counts, these islands are actually going to come into play to keep it, you know, open enough or tight enough, depending on how many people you're playing with. So yeah, definitely struck gold there with the scalability. And the production is of a high standard, you know, nothing overdone here, but certainly up to scratch. The tiles are fine, maybe a little bit small, but I've got no issue there considering you put so many out. Iconography is great. I've never had to look back at the rulebook once, considering, you know, there's a bunch of different icons here. Very simple to explain and understand. The card quality is fine. No, this is standard lookup game stuff, but again, nicely worded. You can clearly understand what everything does. And yeah, just standard Euro components in terms of your player pieces and the gondolas. But yeah, I'm generally happy with the way the game looks and the production quality. Okay, so let's share some final thoughts on Murano. So yeah, I want to reiterate that this game certainly does feel different to anything else that I've played before, and I like the smooth and easy kind of mechanisms here, just moving the gondolas around the outside and taking the assigned action. Anybody can understand that. Yes, it can become a little bit frustrating at times if all the traffic starts to build up, but I suppose that's part of the game and the idea of having money in your supply to get around those, you know, those particular moments. Now, I think you're going to fall in two camps in this game, or whether you're going to like it or not. If you don't mind being at the mercy of other players and maybe embrace a little bit of chaos, then I'm sure you'll get on with this fine. And that idea of optimizing all your cards is going to be quite satisfying, you know, if you completely get things right to the T. You know, maybe I was going for one thing, all of a sudden someone's messed with my plans, but I've still got a gondola on this island, which matches better with this card. So that idea of, you know, mixing and matching and having that flexibility by spreading your gondoliers out, and maybe not putting too much stock in one particular island, because again, you are going to be at the mercy of other players. However, if you're going to find that kind of thing frustrating, where you spent a lot of time and effort to build towards one of your goals, and with a single, you know, nonchalant tile placement, everything is messed up and you're going to score no points for it anymore, then maybe this is going to be one to avoid. Now, I think I just about lean into that second camp. I just don't think it's going to be something I'm going to come back to anymore, because it's just a little bit too wild for me. But I think, again, most of my criticisms here is going to be based on personal, you know, subjectivity rather than objectivity. I love the player powers. This definitely does a good job of making all these interesting. Again, the flow of the game's nice. It plays in a nice succinct amount of time. And there is some good decisions here. But yeah, ultimately, it's just a little bit too wild for me. You do get a little bit of mitigation there when looking through these objective cards. You know, you can draw 3 and keep 1, and you can probably take some educated guesses about what other people are going for. Now, if somebody keeps on investing in a certain type of shop on an island, you probably know they're going to have a card that assigns to having that coloured shops, which means that you might want to sit back and not build any more of those shops, because they're going to get points for your efforts as well. But at the same time, I still come back to that Takanoko syndrome, which I call it. You can just draw a card and it just matches up perfectly with an island. You're going to score it through no effort at all. And for me, that leaves a bit of a sour taste in my mouth, and just a general part of gaming I don't enjoy. So yeah, unfortunately, this is going to be a pass for me. Very close one. I enjoyed it, but I'm not going to get it to the table anymore. I'm looking at about, you know, maybe a 6.5 out of 10 for me. Yeah, just slightly not what I'm looking for. But I'm glad I played it, and it was certainly, you know, a fun game or two. That is Murano by Inka and Markus Brand.